Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. Barrie and Mike, I'm sure we can agree, one of the more popular topics of conversation, whether it's around the dinner table or amongst friends, is, of course, traffic.
Traffic, for sure.
The four seasons of construction or traffic or what's, and we're living in a city that is constantly growing. So, you came up with a great idea, Mike. Let's actually get to the source and get some of these questions that we may have
who
answered.
do we call?
Who
are you going to call?
Who are you going to call? We've got a wonderful guest with us today, and we're thankful to have Steve Rose from the City of Barrie, Manager of Traffic Services. Steve, thank you for joining us on Hitting Home.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's just to start with, before we delve into it, and there's lots of stuff we want to try and talk about here today, but just give us a quick overview of what it is you do when you leave home, get in your car, drive through the traffic, and get to work every day. What's a day look like for you?
Sure, Mike. A typical day for me is driving the speed limit to work. It's always the first thing I try to do.
For all of our friends in law enforcement wondering.
Yes. Okay. We all adhere to the speed limit. But in my role at the City of Barrie, I've been with the City of Barrie since 1999, and my current role is the Manager of Traffic and ROA Services. And what my job entails is managing the traffic group. We have 250 traffic signals in the city. We have 14,000 streetlights in the city. My role, we process about 3,700 ROA permits a year for driveways, for pools, for...
What's ROA?
Right-of-way activity permits.
Okay. Perfect.
So part of that role is, we look at, traffic signals, responsible for the illumination in the city, all the street lighting.
All the things we take for granted and expect to be working and get very frustrated with when they're suddenly not, which can occasionally happen. But, you mentioned you've been there since 99. I mean, if you look from 99 till now, we've been like the fastest growing city in North America at many points through that. And over the next 20, 23 years, we'll probably achieve that title again. So with a city that's growing so fast, obviously traffic management has to keep up with that. Are we doing new things? Are there innovative things that are going to be happening to help manage that traffic, keep things flowing? Give us a quick overview of what you're looking at there. There was a project proposed last week for, I think it was, well over 3,000 new homes are on Essa Road. But what do you do when that comes along?
So what we do is we have a new traffic system in the City of Barrie. We're really excited about it, and we did have an older traffic system, but the new traffic system, it allows us to coordinate corridors together, so intersections along corridors together, so we can communicate second by second with intersections from the office. So what that allows us to do is it allows staff to modify signal timings on the flow depending on the flow of traffic on the roadway, and so we're looking at various
kind of an AI system, more or less, or
yes, the new exciting item that we're going to be trying as part of the Essa Road project is almost AI. It's real-time congestion management system.
Okay.
And what that does is it's with detection set up through the corridor, we can determine cars are arriving. And so based on the cars arriving, the AI algorithm determines the best signal timing. So where we would use that is my group goes and does signal timings, but we're not doing them daily. So if there's an issue on the Highway 400, it's congested, something's happening on the 400, people are getting off the 400, this new system within 15 minutes, based on that traffic volume adjustment, every 15 minutes will suggest the best signal timing.
Wow.
And so that's ultimately how successful that works will turn into Mapleview Drive, Bradford Street, the new projects on Dunlop.
There's a lot of misconceptions here then for the average person who hasn't been inside that space age setup that you've got that looks kind of like an air traffic control setup. Normally we think, oh, well, take this road because the lights are timed, or take this road because you know what to expect. But the reality is that you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that technological advancements have actually allowed you to adjust patterns based on behavior, based on traffic volumes.
And traffic changes. So one of the biggest challenges we have are like Mapleview Drive. In the morning, traffic's going to the highway to go wherever they're going for start their day. At lunchtime, we're noticing they're coming from the highway and they're going to the shopping areas. And then in the evenings, it's from the highway through the corridor, so they're coming from the highway. So we determine different times of day travel patterns. And one of the interesting things, even that the city of Barrie, our biggest challenge also is because we're halfway to cottage country, we get seasonal traffic patterns. So we used to notice it was Friday afternoons
Wednesday
and Sundays. It's Wednesday, Thursday nights. So now we're noticing Thursday nights, Ferndale Drive's getting busier. So how do we then, it's just the next evolution of, okay, we've done these signal timings, now what are those signal timings work? So we're working on several kinds of timing patterns, but one of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to do is emergency detour management.
Right.
So when there's an emergency, do we have emergency plans? And back to the new traffic system, what that allows us to do is real time send timings out, a new timing plan to that roadway to say, whoo, this is getting busy.
Okay.
What can we do? What have we thought out to help flow traffic through?
And there'll be, I guess, letter signs that will advise people go this way instead of this way at this point. Or
if it's a major road closure, the OPP closes the highway and puts those signs up. For the most part, people have their defined travel pattern they want to go.
Yeah.
And so it's us as staff noticing those.
So you said to us offline that part of your job is working with residents' expectations. So there's a combination of that, but I'm also hearing, of course, that you work closely with your partners in policing to ensure road safety, to ensure compliance. You started by saying you drive the speed limit every day, But so how does that work? Because obviously a lot of what we've talked about so far, just in the first few minutes of the show, is revolved around the impact and the influence that the 400 has, or that people have with their relationship to the 400.
Yeah.
But we've got interior streets, we've got arterial routes, we've got sort of side roads, whatever you want to call it. So how does that balance play in terms of what are you noticing people do most to get from point A to point B? Are they all jumping on the highway still, or are we using our interior streets more, or what are you noticing?
That's an interesting question. Because the city of Barrie has the Highway 400 cut through the middle, we have the 400, which the Ministry of Transportation has always said it's a connection 401 to Owens to North Bay. But we're also noticing that a lot of people use it as inner-city travel.
Shortcut route.
Yeah, inner-city travel.
At the best of times.
So as travel patterns change, or events happen, or construction happens, people start infiltrating through neighborhoods. So as you mentioned, our tie-in with Barrie Police is trying to coordinate our efforts for driver expectations. We don't want you to be in the neighborhoods cutting through, because those vehicles that are cutting through a neighborhood, who are using a residential street to bypass the major roadways they should be on, they now cause local neighborhood problems where your kids playing
Noise, safety.
ball hockey or people out on the street. So how do we then control that driver behavior, so then we start implementing traffic calming measures?
Yeah. And with, as time marches on, as cities grows, and as Barrie is destined to do, we start to see new features implemented and tested. I go out to Prince Edward Island a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks every year. I've noticed in a city the size of Charlottetown, about a third the size of Barrie, they were kind of a pioneer for traffic circles. They've had them there. They've done a couple other interesting things, but traffic circles in and of itself, I know I came back from one of those trips and started a dialogue with you going, hey, why is Barrie looking at this? So tell us a little bit. You did answer to me that it's something we're looking at. Where are we with that now?
Currently, the city of Barrie is evaluating roundabouts on multiple streets within the city. Some notable examples are part of the Bradford Street environmental assessment. We looked at the potential for roundabouts at Bradford, Tiffin, and Tiffin, Lakeshore, and Lakeshore.
Yeah.
There's a couple more that we were looking at that are looking to be further evaluated on Big Bay Point and Mapleview as you approach 20th Side Road.
And they're proven to actually speed up the flow and reduce the incidence of accidents, are they not?
It's hit or miss. It's working for drivers.
Yeah.
But it's not working in urban areas and tight areas.
But they require some real estate.
It's a challenge. Yeah. It's a challenge for pedestrians. And then so on Bradford Street, having two roundabouts close together, the challenge is pedestrians. Pedestrians in the middle.
It's a long walk around. Yeah.
One of the other issues you deal with roundabouts is you have to remove homes. because they take up such a large footprint.
Yeah, not too many built areas where you could
That's-
just drop one
yes.
in without making some major changes. And that's why, like, we see them out around Collingwood, Wasaga area, if you've been out that way.
Yeah,
John.
no, I've been out there
But again,
before.
they've stuck them out in the middle of undeveloped areas, so it was much easier to implement.
Yeah. But as the city's moving forward, we are looking at just different
As one, yeah.
different options for right-of-way control at intersections.
Excellent, interesting. So ever changing, and again, we've heard the feedback. I'm sure you've heard the feedback as well. You know, all you're going to do, driving is difficult enough as it is. Go ahead and stick one in there, and it's just going to create more chaos. So I can imagine that your job and your daily life is to balance sort of the benefits as well as, you know, what's going to move traffic, what's going to be for safety. But as well, we're still very dependent on the vehicle, and you pointed out quite rightly, obviously we've got pedestrians to take into consideration. I'm assuming we've also got cyclists to take into consideration as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And obviously the city's got a big push towards active transportation, et cetera. So all of these things, I guess what we won't do is we won't stick your phone number on the screen here for people to call, because you mentioned about people driving through neighborhoods, and I don't want you to get all those calls.
We'll post it at the end of the show.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
But you do have a program, though. With that said, all joking aside, you do have a program each year, starting right about now in the spring, where residents are encouraged to reach out to their counselors. I think you called it the top 20 or something like that.
Well, it's our annual temporary traffic calming program. So throughout your wards, throughout the different wards in the city, we evaluate those roadways based on traffic speeds, concerns, and where we're noticing collisions occurring. What elements can we put in, such as temporary traffic cushions, radar speed boards? We use a new tool. We tried it a couple years ago. It's our constable cutout. It's a cutout of a police officer doing photo radar that we attach to streetlight poles, and we're noticing that these tools are effective at slowing down people in our neighborhoods.
That's a good thing to come back to, and that interaction between the public and your department there. So I think we're ready to go to break here now.
We do have to go to break. This is fascinating, and I know you are a hot topic. I don't know how much FaceTime you get, but you are definitely a hot topic, and we're thankful to have you on here. So stay with us for more of Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. We'll be right back with Steve Rose, who's the manager of traffic services, on Hitting Home.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. We're here with Steve Rose from Traffic Services for the City of Barrie. We're having a great conversation, and this is a topic that's of interest and importance to pretty much everybody and anybody. Even if you don't drive, you're a pedestrian, you're out there in the streets, you want to be able to move freely and safely through our streets, and your job is to ensure that that happens. And one of the things we kind of touched on, I want to come back to now is, you know, the city's growing. There's a lot of changes happening. We've got the 400 series of bridges through Barrie. I don't know if I can name them all, but we've got Essa Road, Bayfield, Sunnydale, Ann Street, and I don't know if I've covered them all there, but all of these are either in the process of or soon to be rebuilt. These are bridges that were built in the 50s for a much smaller road capacity. They're all being redone now. Tell us a little bit about that. Actually, before we even get to that, talk about the one bridge that was new. It was not replaced. There was no bridge there, and that's Harvey Road that came into our south end of Barrie. And tell us how that has improved, if it has improved, our traffic flow in Barrie.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Harvey Road was an interesting example of a new bridge goes in that wasn't there before, the overpass.
And that's rare, yeah.
Yeah, over the last year and a half. My group has done traffic counts. Prior to the bridge going in, we did traffic counts throughout the area, and then we did traffic patterns again once the bridge was in. And then we noticed about an additional 14,000 vehicles were no longer now using Essa Road and or Mapleview Drive.
Wow.
So then my group it then creates another challenge for us where Bayview Big Bay Point has to have updated signal timings, Essa Harvey, Mapleview Drive, because there's less cars on it. That travel pattern changes, and I mean, we've done studies right after the bridge went in, and we almost had a minute reduction in travel time along Mapleview Drive.
Wow. And tied in with that, more or less, at least geographically, is Bryant Drive being joined from where it ends off of Mapleview, and it just kind of stops just past behind the Home Depot, or coming south where Leon's is. You come off of Essa Road going south. There's a big patch of land there in between where if you look at the map, you can see someone was planning to tie that together at some point in time in the future. We're close to that future right now, are we not?
Fingers crossed. That's going to be another key arterial connection through the city of Barrie, where it's going to allow drivers choices.
Yeah, but the province MTO has input on that. It's not independent of that. The city just saying, okay, it's time, let's tie it in. It's all.
It is a project tied with the Ministry of Transportation.
Yeah.
So one of the things, though, one could say it's amazing luck that Harvey went in when it did, and others could say, well, there's probably an ounce of planning that went in there as well. Obviously, we've seen construction now for Harvey. We're seeing construction for the Ann Street Bridge, and soon to be in the Dunlop Street replacement as well. Bryan Drive going through. Will that happen in time for Essa Road's bridge work, or do you know how that timing is working? Because obviously there's going to be a big congestion issues around the replacement of Essa. So thankfully Harvey's there to take some of that load off of it just in time for Essa to start. But I'm imagining in terms of moving traffic northbound, southbound, et cetera, the ability to use that. I don't know how long the project is going to be for Essa Road's bridge construction.
Last check for me was Essa Road was 2024, projected 2024. But as all things, it would be awesome for us to have these other connections in place, but we are working towards construction management plans on if the timing doesn't work out as well, how are we then going to move traffic through, and what are the routes that people are going to?
I think it's fair to say, and I think it's important to say for our viewers as well, and myself to remember, you're not responsible for construction projects or planning, et cetera. You are responsible for dealing with the what is, not as much as the what will be.
We're not. My group's not involved in the plan. We are involved in. We provide input in. Onto these major road projects, but we're not responsible for the
work you
Net
do,
project.
it provides the resources for the planning and how that planning goes forward. So it's all interconnected.
It is all connected.
They build it, you manage it, and keep it moving.
At the end of the day, my group's responsible for the day-to-day operation of the roadways.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and again, this more falls under the development and planning, I suppose, but for my own sake, I go under that bridge at the 400 multiple times a day on Essa Road. And it's been one lane each way, I believe, and a very narrow area for pedestrians to walk. With that new bridge, once it's built, are we going to see 2 lanes and 2 lanes either way, or are you aware of that? Have you seen the plans for that when it's finally
I've seen
built?
the plans. I don't recall, but I believe 6 lanes. But
6 lanes, wow. Well, that will make...
I'll have to double check.
Let me ask you a different
check
question,
that,
and I don't want to be unfair to you. So let me ask you a different question, because I think it's going to tie directly into that. We're seeing and we're hearing in the news, reading in the newspaper, obviously, that there's yet again another proposal for the agricultural lands, the former raceway. And of course, everybody has an opinion, and that's fine, et cetera. One of the questions, of course, is around traffic capacity. I'm not going to ask you specifically about that project, but when you're talking about traffic management, when people ask the question around capacity, what do you take into consideration when you're looking at any road anywhere in the city about what its capacity is and how you manage sort of spikes in volume, I'm assuming during commuter times, et cetera, and even how that's changed post-COVID with more people working from home?
It's an interesting exercise the city undertakes approximately every 5 years. It's an update to the Transportation Master Plan. So the Transportation Master Plan is looking at all the different traffic zones throughout the city, and also how we interconnect with travel from other municipalities and neighboring communities into the city of Barrie. And then that's used to determine the number of lanes. What's the right-of-way widths we need on our roadways to accommodate future traffic, so to 2042. Or no, we're looking, say, 2051. Like, as we start looking out into the future, what are the needs and the demands on our roadways going to be with new developments occurring and new plans of subdivision going in? They all add traffic, but it's all being managed and accounted for in the planning.
And with that, we are a car-centric society, and it's been a car-centric conversation up until now, but we have to include the reality that more and more people, at least in the warmer months, are using bicycles for recreation, for health, and even for transportation in town. You know, the term comes up, intermodal, quite a bit, I'm sure, in the course of your day too. Meaning, you know, it's not just cars that we have to accommodate for in our planning and development and management, but also cyclists, also pedestrians. And then there's another element to that which we'll get to, and that's the e-bike thing that's come in there, but just to throw a monkey wrench in it all. But I guess the short question is, what have we been doing? I've seen it, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it, how we've been improving the ability to get around this town on a bicycle more safely and more easily. Tell us a little bit about those projects.
No, that's a good question. Even Essa Road, my staff we were having the discussion, so even on the Essa Road project, we're adding in bicycle signals. Yeah. So as cyclists travel through the highway corridor, they have safe crossings. The city has been implementing bicycle lanes across the city, trying to create connected networks, how we can get people through the city.
Duckworth Street around the 400 is one good example.
Correct. I live in that area, and I commute to Ferndale on my bicycle in the summer. So I try to do my part and ride my bike, and I find it's my commute's gone from 12 minutes to 20 minutes by riding my bike, and so I get good exercise. Yeah. So, but the city in general, we're trying to plan the new subdivisions, roadways where we implement bicycle lanes where we can.
Yeah. Pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly, and yeah.
So you did it, not me. So you've now talked about planning. So I'm going to jump in on that. But when we talk about because everything's connected, right? You're not working in your own silo. You obviously are part of the conversation. There was a conversation at one point, and I'm curious if it's still happening, about how we plan the growth of our city. So we've seen, if we look at our city right now, you've got some major sort of retail hubs. You've got the Georgian Mall area up on Bayfield, or the entire Bayfield Strip for that matter. You've got sort of the South End, Mapleview area, et cetera. And then there was talk around saying, well, listen, basically what that is instructing people subliminally to do is to go from your home out in the middle of wherever it is, in the middle of a residential neighborhood, get in your car, and everybody drives to these sort of magnets that are the retail hubs. Yeah. The future of planning at one point was, let's start to break that up a little bit and make more community centers where you have like a park and a retail area and a grocery area, et cetera, and home. Is that still part of the discussion, and will that help with planning, or is there new thinking going in a different direction that you're aware of?
It's not my group, as you mentioned. It's not my group. I am part of the group, but as the city moves forward, it's trying to build livable communities. So, I mean, how do we tie transit into these communities to now take other forms of transportation throughout the city? So, using bicycles, using transit to get around to these hubs, so it's not just all going to one major spot.
And our transit is. I mean, you hear, I think in any community, it's divided. People will say they love their transit system, while there's others who say it can always be better. The ones you tend to hear more of, the loudest are the ones who think it can be better. What's happening, and maybe this is again out of your department, but hey, we got you here. You're not just representing traffic, you're representing the city of Barrie.
Well, maybe in terms of moving people. How about in terms of moving people? Like, you've seen some municipalities that actually, you talked about bicycle signals, you've got pedestrian signals, you've got vehicular signals. Some and even around Allendale Station, actually, they've got a transit signal. Yeah. So might we see more transit signals or transit dedicated lanes, for example, at any time in the future?
I think a good way from my angles looking at that is just looking at the way transit moves through our corridor, providing transit priority. So similar to how an emergency vehicle travels through the city through intersections, Barrie Transit is looking at modules within our new traffic system that we can then give priority to transit traveling along our major corridors. So that's just another tool that we can implement with our new system.
And to be fair, that's an entirely different part of the municipal government there, transit there, from what.
Correct,
from what
but
you
we
know.
do work. We do work close. Yeah, we do work close.
There's a theme in this show here.
There's a water cooler conversation that must take place, though.
Yeah. When we come back from break, though, let's talk about some more ideas that maybe are on the radar. And again, they might need some dust blown off them, or they might be getting shelved as you continue to use. I think you talk about it, using the evidence, using data to determine what the next step forward is. So we've got some things that we've seen around the country or in different places. We're going to toss them out there and see where that goes with you. But stay with us for more exhilarating and invigorating conversation that gets your blood moving with Steve Rose, from Manager of Traffic Services with the City of Barrie. Stay with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we're happy to be joined by Steve Rose, Manager of Traffic Services with the City of Barrie. Thanks again for being here.
See him for being on time.
No problem.
This time, there's a story behind that. Inside joke, I suppose. But we've been talking about traffic. We've been talking about your role, which is, I guess, summarized down as moving people safely, moving people efficiently, and of course, that's a battle that is you're never going to be out of a job by the sounds of it. Yeah, in a growing city. So let's talk about that during sort of the evolution. Let's say, prior, a lot of these projects have been planned for maybe 5, 10, 20 years out to predict future needs. And then there's a bit of a wrinkle that comes in where we have a pandemic that kind of, in my understanding, changed everything, because you have people no longer commuting, but you're analyzing the data, right? You're analyzing the data in order to make these predictions and move traffic and to plan for the future. How did that, if anything, create a wrinkle and sort of mess you up?
It is an interesting wrinkle, Arif, because what we noticed during the COVID epidemic and just people working from home, we had a close to a 30% reduction in collisions in the City of Barrie. On average, there's just over 2,000 collisions occur within the city, but we did notice a 30% drop.
And that's returned now since?
Not quite. We're still about 400 collisions a year previous to what we were in 2019.
Okay.
2019, but it does create an interesting wrinkle, because with the new dynamic of people being able to work remotely, it's certain routes have less traffic on it now, or other routes have more traffic on it now because of the way the people's workday has changed. So it's just another. I sort of call it another ingredient in us baking our recipe of what's the optimal traffic flows that we can put on our city.
And safety for that pedestrian on the street and for those behind the wheel. That's an important focus of what you do. But I would think that what also falls under the banner of safety as well is travel times, getting to emergency services. And this is something, as a realtor, I notice with clients. Once I think the threshold's around the age 50. Beyond that, the older the client is who's buying a home, the higher up the list of the important items you want in a home. One item that keeps moving up with age is distance from the hospital. How quickly can first responders get to my house if I need them there?
And how quickly
of
can I get to the
course that
hospital?
ties into traffic flow. And tell us a little bit about how you consciously deal with those concerns and considerations.
The City of Barrie has been working with the fire emergency services. They have emitters on their fire vehicles. So as they are responding to emergencies, we have devices on our traffic signals. They're called birdies. Most people assume they're cameras. That's usually the biggest question we get, but it's a birdie. And what that does is it detects that a fire truck is coming, and up to 300-400 meters away, we then hold the traffic signal green to allow the emergency vehicle to have unimpeded traffic, preferably unimpeded vehicles within their route, to move them through the
To
city.
move through. Can I look at that like on my Uber app and just say, oh, they're almost here? Or
I'll hook you up.
is that just
I'll
you
hook
guys?
you up. I'll hook you up.
Okay, all right.
So, but does GPS play a role in managing traffic with the fleet of vehicles under the city and the county? Because you've got fire and the ambulances
Yes,
and police, et cetera.
Different groups have GPS units for their vehicles. I worked within the roads operations group, and the roads operations groups, all our vehicles have GPSs on it. But that's what I said. We use the stats, and I think where we're using data to help us is like when it comes to vehicle collisions and where are the collisions occurring in the city, and we then run the stats.
So you've got your hot list, I think you mentioned before, about sort of where the most collisions happen. What kind of stuff are you looking for? What kind of stuff? There's a great question. What kind of stuff are you looking for? What's the data that you're actually analyzing, and how can an intersection go from being sort of a high frequency accident frequency intersection to coming off that list with what kind of help?
Okay. Yeah, I call this my big data. This is our big data question. We collect, so we know the location of every collision that occurs on our roads.
Yeah.
We also then have the traffic volume on our roads. So we do very detailed statistic analysis, but we have top 20 frequency, but what we're also looking at is trying to equalize all the traffic. So if we assumed every street had 1 million vehicles entering on it, where does that look for travel patterns? And what my
You're
group
looking for the why, not just the
yeah. So what my group does is we work with our roads operations groups, Barrie Police, the engineering group, and just other groups in the city that how can we make a change? So we go to those locations and we're looking for patterns. So we go to our top ones patterns. One of the examples I used was Huronia and Little. Back in the early 2000s, Huronia and Little, it was about 13 collisions a year, and by looking at the intersection, we realized by putting traffic signals 40 feet in the air, you can see them farther away, and it was no longer the number one because the next year it had 0 collisions. So that's a good example of how are we using this data to see, are the collisions occurring at night? Are they all left turns? Is there a pattern occurring? So we're trying to find those patterns and then working with our team members.
Are there modified processes for different weather with regards to how you do the job, or just in your observations of the data? How does weather impact on the data?
What our data shows
there's
us.
some obvious things in there.
Yes, what our data shows us is come November is traditionally the highest collision month in the city of Barrie.
Well, adapting, yeah.
It's
that first snowfall.
who has winter tires, who doesn't have winter tires, and just it's new. It's changing driver patterns. We notice it from summer to the start of school.
Yeah.
We notice from school to winter. Just
Those who just moved from Toronto who are seeing snow for their first time. Yeah.
Well, the snow that sits, for example, yeah. So another question that I would have, though, is, I mean, let's go with the fact that there's a good chance that when there's a motor vehicle collision, that there's some driver error involved somewhere in the line. It was a human element. But what impact have you noticed with distracted driving, with cell phones and people being distracted? Obviously, there's more of it. We all know that. But is there anything that technology can assist with? And you know, how are you planning around knowing that people more often than they should be are
Yes,
distracted?
I mean that's a bigger challenge. I think that's the help of Barrie Police on the enforcement. I had this conversation yesterday because our conversation, we have a driver, a gentleman at the city of Barrie is responsible for driver training. So with the city of Barrie, it's what are the lessons that we can teach our drivers? So every year they have a snow school where they're getting ready for the snow season, and it's just preparing them to just get them to understand these are the challenges that occur on the road. But going back to distracted driving, I think it's just working with Barrie Police, community groups to get the word out to please put your cell phone away.
Yeah. And with regards to technology, most of us now with newer cars all have the built-in infotainment unit, which comes with the ability to watch real-time maps between Apple, Google, Waze, and more of us, almost all of us, who have the opportunity in the car for that will be using those. And I find it's great because it also shows us, there's congestion ahead, there's this or that. Are they getting their data and information from the municipalities or some of these systems? You guys, is there a cooperation between municipal government or government in general and the traffic departments and some of these private technology things to make them more, real and up to the minute?
One of the interesting things we work with in our GIS group is, as part of my role is detour management, we sit and we look at where are the major projects happening across the city.
Right.
Those cities, as that project goes live, it then gets implemented into Waze.
Oh, it does, eh? Okay.
So then it's implemented to the
Waze.
Waze.
Operated independently, or if there was some cooperation.
There is a cooperation.
That's
so
good.
I don't know how. It just happens. I ask and it happens.
Above your pay grade.
Yeah. But the road. So if the roadway is going to be closed, that information, I think within the end of the day, it does a dump to the Waze, and the Waze gets it as it comes live. So and then as the project is complete, it gets removed from
That's
Waze.
good to see. Yeah.
So one of the things that you had talked about, though, was obviously there's a relationship with the various partners within the city. And let's go with, you talked about fire. Let's talk about community safety and well-being. Let's talk about policing. There is a relationship there between the city's traffic services and the Barrie Police Service. Maybe you can tell us what you're working on. Obviously, not the stuff we're not supposed to know, but the stuff we are supposed to know.
Yes, no, it's exciting. We've been working closely with our partners at Barrie Police Services. We recently met to discuss how we can best work on just collision deterrence. What are things that we can do, police presence. Throughout the city, you'll notice we have radar speed boards. Those radar speed boards are showing your speed as you're driving, but we actually record that data. We give Barrie Police access to it because everything that we're trying to do, like we mentioned, driver expectation, it's education, enforcement, and engineering. And so we're trying to use tools. So we work with Barrie Police, and we'll say, instead of saying, like when the residents call into the city of Barrie and say, someone's speeding on my street, it's
already happened, yeah.
Yeah, but when are they speeding on your street? I think Barrie Police, what we're noticing in our relationship with them, if we can provide that sort of evidence base that between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. typically we're noticing higher speeds, then let's target those hours. So that's sort of how that relationship is working. And any sort of new initiatives that either our groups can do to coordinate, we're sort of just looking to enhance how we can help each other.
Yeah, and one way to monitor that I believe for the last couple of years anyways, the province is now allowing, and that is red light cameras and I would guess the speeding cameras. Are those things that, first, are they happening at all in Barrie, or are there plans for those to happen? Because they're effective tools. They're an irritation for people too, I think, but it keeps everybody alert and aware.
The City of Barrie is currently investigating automated speed enforcement, which, to help the audience out, are speed cameras located in community safety zones in front of schools.
Right.
So
where they should be, if anywhere, yeah.
We have high concentrations of vulnerable pedestrians in these areas that we need you to slow down.
Yeah, for sure. And areas where there's seniors living too, I would say would rank high. Yeah.
So we do have to go to break. When we come back from break, though, Steve, maybe you've got some thoughts that you could communicate to the public on what are some goals for a happy, healthy, stress-free commute and improving our city. Maybe traffic services working on some campaigns or initiatives that you want to sort of share those messages with. So think on that while we're at break, and we'll be right back after this break with more with Steve Rose, Manager of Traffic Services from the City of Barrie. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. And Steve Rose, Manager of Traffic Services at the City of Barrie. Glad you're here. Throw this out to you. We've talked about a lot of things in terms of data and how you partner with the ministry on around the 400 and how Ministry of Transportation that would be, and how we plan and how we move people safely and efficiently. But at the end of the day, we actually do have different roads for different purposes. And if you were to sort of paint a bit of a picture on what would be ideal on how we use our roads, how would you describe that?
I think, like you're saying, in a perfect world, we want vehicles to use the roadway for the function they were intended for. So if you are taking the major arterial roadway, we want you to stay on that major arterial roadway. We've put signal timings in place. We want to coordinate, to move that flow. We want you to avoid using the local residential streets where children are out playing, people are riding their bikes, people are out for their walks, in senior centers, in areas of seniors, and people crossing the roadway.
Yeah.
We want you to slow down. So
sure.
I would rather you stay to the roadway you're intended for, because it then leads to, like I say, we're in the solutions game. So then it becomes, you start having concerns, and then my group gets involved in how we can best solve it.
Where's your confidence level with all the things you see that are currently underway or planned for with regards to traffic and roads? Where's your confidence level sit when you look a few years down the road? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we at least maintaining our hold as the population grows? Or
I think as the city grows, we implemented traffic calming within the city of Barrie back in 2011. The Traffic City program is evolved a little, and something new that we're working on this year, we're starting next week. We're looking at redoing our traffic calming policy moving forward. So what are new things that we could be implementing on our roadways to help manage the speed of traffic and control the livability within our neighborhoods? So part of this is we're going to be having open houses, inviting the public in, showing off some ideas, and hearing all positive responses.
of course.
But it's behavior management, really what it is that we, between the relationship with those who are doing traffic enforcement versus traffic planning, all right, there's the proactive and then there's the reactive a little bit, right? It is about trying to get compliance and behavior management. And by and large, I'm assuming the vast majority of drivers are responsible individuals, but sometimes your job has to cater to those who are always on the other side of what is responsible.
Yes, it keeps it challenging, but even just, you touched on the traffic planning. It's in new plans of subdivision and building these new roadways. What are elements that we can include at the time of construction?
Yeah.
So that we don't have to come back afterwards with Band-Aids. Try and find a solution.
So that being said, one of the things you talked about, though, was the speed cushions, and I know the city has sort of tested in certain neighborhoods the intersections that have the raised interlock, for example. Have we figured out how to make that work with snow clearing, for example, or are there things that we're learning that are unique to our area that can't be done a certain way, or that you would do differently if you had to do it again?
It's one of the challenges that the city of Barrie has to think about is snow and the impact of snow on our roadways. But through working with our roads operations groups, just getting that feedback back from them on what elements work, what elements don't. And you mentioned the raised intersections. That's been an excellent tool. We have 4 to 5 of those around the city. So as the city starts to just keep growing, it's what are measures that we can do, and what does that look like, and what other elements can we include?
And those temporary or movable speed humps or speed bumps, whichever you want to refer to them as a resident of Barrie, if I'm watching here and I'm curious, I'm thinking I've got those speeders on my street, I would love those on my street. Now maybe you can tell us how someone might go about bringing their street to the attention of the city and hopefully getting one of those speed humps.
Very timely question, Mike.
Yeah.
Our best recommendation is to reach out to your councillor. We work with the local ward councillors, and like I said earlier, we provide them the areas that we're getting a lot of hot spots and a lot of where we think they can go.
Right.
And so it's working, just letting your local councillor know now's a good time. Through the city app. The city app's got a lot of great resources on it and that you can apply. And then even just for speed management, going on to City of Barrie Police's website, as they have an online reporting tool that could also help with evidence-based enforcement.
We've covered so much here, and I want to ask you more or less a hypothetical, but looking to the future, and maybe this is a future beyond our work years that each of us have left here, but at some point, automobiles are going to be automated. To a certain extent, it's happening now. I'm curious, does the city today and now, does the conversation around the table ever involve, we should be planning for a time when vehicles are all going to be autonomous and we're basically just riders along for the ride in those vehicles? And one would hope things move a little more efficient. Is that something?
There have been some discussions, and it's been interesting through my role. I've had even discussions in the past with some of the automated vehicles where they're like, you'll be able to get in your vehicle at home, your automated vehicle is going to drive you to work, You save money on paying for parking because your vehicle is going to drive itself home without you in it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And then I said, and there must be another Steve Rose out in the world, because I get asked every year to come speak in Europe on automated vehicles. And I'm like, wrong guy. Wrong Steve Rose.
I see one challenge in there somehow, and that is the fact that these vehicles will be programmed to not run over pedestrians. And let me explain. If you go into any major downtown, city busy downtown, there's a certain element of people jaywalking. They'll walk in front, but they're hesitant about it because they know that there's driver error and you might get run over. But if you know the vehicles are programmed to never hit a person, downtowns are going to be chaos. People are going to be jaywalking all the time, and there'll be gridlock in the downtowns. That's what I see with automated vehicles in the future. So, just something for you to be prepared for.
That's a little loaded.
I don't know how you respond to that.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I
a little
like where
loaded.
your mind's going. Obviously, what are you doing at night? But you know, you're mapping things out, et cetera.
We'll
but
sit here again in 24
And
hours.
I don't doubt it.
Well,
I
there's
don't doubt it.
interesting articles that I'm reading on that, on the whole psychology of how you program these cars.
Yeah,
to
it's
detect that.
fascinating, and it is a very real thing. But again, it's kind of science fiction at the moment, but we're headed there. We'll be there soon enough.
So as we go, your look out into the future. Does the evidence tell you that we're not going to go back to pre-2019 levels of commuting? Do you see staying at home and working from home, and therefore the impact on traffic patterns, staying a little bit more to where they are now? What do you see?
I think as the city grows and as different travel patterns occur, I think we'll always have emerging traffic patterns. I do love what I'm seeing with the opportunities for workplaces having work from home and seeing more sort of hybrid policies on the workplace, but we'll always have needs for.
And what is the planned population projections for Barrie? I believe it's by 2030. We're looking at around 300,000 residents.
I believe the number is like 252.
252. But I mean, a lot of your planning has to be with consideration of that number and the time it's going to take to reach that time and date and population level. Are there a lot of major changes that are going to have to take place with regards to road structure?
Let me jump in on that too with you. As we will see, part of the plan in the city planning was the major corridors. For example, Yonge Street is going to see more high density building, and maybe Bradford is going to see more high density. We're coming back full circle on this now. You're not a planner, but you have to plan for traffic patterns and model for traffic patterns. As we see potentially and quite likely more concentrated groups of higher density and higher volume, how will that change, and how will you plan for that?
And that goes back to what I was mentioning about our transportation master plan at the city of Barrie. So it's an ever evolving document where it's constantly looking at what are the latest trends, where are we seeing people going, and then based on multimodal trips. Do we want to, like, as we're trying to get more transit trips, more active transportation trips, what does that road network look like based on what the future is going to hold? So the city's constantly looking at that, and like back to an earlier part of that question is then developing a capital plan that's going to meet those future needs.
So with that in mind, with more people, and we're not building more land, we're just putting more people on land, and yes, we are expanding our city limits a little bit more. I have to imagine there's a conversation somewhere by someone in public transit that says if we can make transit as accessible as possible and move people through these corridors, leave the car at home or park in an off-site lot, and we'll get you to where you want to go through an efficient transit system, obviously is a key. Otherwise, no one's going to use it. So, again, do you have relationships with people in transit that you're having these conversations with?
Yes, we're having these conversations, and they are looking at these tools.
Where can you direct people if they want more information about some of the things we talked about, and possibly more with regards to traffic or anything else? I guess there is the City of Barrie website, but is there specific sections in there that deal specifically with topics that are near and dear to you?
I think with just looking at, you can go online to the City of Barrie's website. We have lots of information on road safety, our traffic calming program, and just other initiatives that we're doing within traffic. But there's also Building Barrie. There's a lot of different tools on our city website that, well, please
and
go
there are
to it.
public meetings that happen at various times, and there's full warning to those, and I guess you can always get the information
Yes, you can get your
when
information.
those are taking place.
Correct.
And town halls with the
Town
various-
halls, and as I mentioned, we're going forward with our update to our traffic calming policy. So that's going to be an exciting step for us. So look forward to coming out and having that discussion.
So we're now just towards the end of the winter season, if you will. We're about to start the next season, which I believe is construction season. And obviously, you did talk about detour management and all of that kind of thing. Last year, we did see a record number probably in the city of ongoing construction projects, some to the chagrin of drivers because obviously there's simultaneous projects going on. The upside of that is that there's a lot of investment being made in roadway improvement and all that kind of thing. So we have to be a little bit patient so that we see the benefit of it. But any advice for drivers? Obviously, pack your patience, leave early, plan your route.
And I think that's you hit the nail on the head. And we always say in our world, because we notice patterns, it's when the roadways change, be patient the first couple days. Just as people understand that route this is the challenge of this route. They then find all the routes, and then within time, and us managing the timings and us looking at it, just take your time.
Yeah.
Find an alternative use of transportation other than the vehicle, if you can.
And change is an instant. Change is constant, but it's not instant. So in your role, actually, probably, I don't want to say lower profile, but it's one of these sort of silent things that's going on in the background where you're collecting all of this data and you're collecting all this evidence that you can then share with the different partners in the different elements of the city, moving the city forward. To effectively plan and to effectively prepare for the future. Yeah. So yours sounds to me like it's not always an immediate sort of effort and an immediate reward, but a lot of it is future planning.
Yeah, there's two sides of it. We monitor the day-to-day operations, but my group is a technical resource to many groups within the city of Barrie. So we deal with the daily challenges of how can we make that change now, and what recommendations do we have as we move forward with projects that we can implement in future projects.
Proactive versus reactive. Absolutely. Yes. Well, listen, Steve, Mike, unless you got another one, we got about 10 seconds.
I could probably take us through another 10, 15 minutes, but I'm just going to hold back for now, and maybe we'll get you on a future episode of the show.
So we promised not to give your phone number out. Speak to your counselor if you've got an idea, though, for your street being shortlisted, maybe for some traffic calming or some other form of attention, whether it's a radar board or some traffic presence, and of course, use the resources that we have. Drive safely, don't drive distracted. You drive the speed limit, and I'm going to tell people you were late. You were late for your budget meeting because you were stuck in traffic.
Oh no, yes. That's
not today.
Yes.
You were on time.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I don't recall that happening.
No, but we do appreciate you joining us here on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. You survived. You made it through.
Yes, informative.
So again, Steve Rose, Manager of Traffic Services, direct your questions to your counselor, but you're definitely here, and we appreciate the information and insight that you've provided. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.